The stars over Earth had always been quiet. People had stared at them for thousands of years, wondering if someone else was out there. For a long time, the stars had only given silence in return. But one calm night, the silence ended. In the middle of a peaceful evening when the world was busy with small, ordinary things, telescopes and observatories began to blink with strange readings. The signals came from beyond the moon, not from a planet or a comet, but from a fleet. It was moving with purpose in perfect formation. Every ship glowed with a soft silver light that shimmered against the blackness of space. They were not human ships. Within hours, every space agency, radio tower, and observatory in the world confirmed it. Something or someone was coming. Governments across the planet tried to keep calm, but they knew the truth could not stay hidden. People had phones, telescopes, and satellites. Within minutes, the world saw images of the ships floating beyond the moon. Some were afraid. Some were excited. Others simply stood under the night sky, watching in silence. The visitors called themselves the Varn. Their first message came through a burst of light translated by machines into simple words. We bring order to chaos. We offer peace through unity. Submit and be joined. It was a calm message. Too calm. It did not sound like a greeting. It sounded like a command. At first, the world did not answer. The message repeated again and again in many languages. The Varn thought silence meant agreement. They were used to other worlds that bent easily under their voice. They had seen countless civilizations give up without question. To them, silence was surrender, but Earth was not silent because of fear. Humanity was silent because it was thinking. On a small island, a scientist named Mira stood beside her telescope, staring at the silver shapes near the moon. She had spent her life studying signals from space, hoping to hear from someone out there. Now that it had happened, she felt a strange chill instead of joy. The way the Varn spoke was too confident, too practiced. They were not here to learn. They were here to lead. Across the ocean in a mountain city, a man named Aaron stood on the balcony of his home. The sky looked the same, but it felt heavier. He could see the faint glimmer of something unnatural above the clouds. He had no power, no title, but like billions of others, he felt the same question rising inside him. What would happen next? World leaders gathered through video calls that filled screens across continents. The United Nations held emergency meetings. Messages were sent asking the Varn to explain their purpose. The aliens replied with the same phrase, "We bring order to chaos. Submit and be joined." The message never changed. For 3 days, humanity spoke among itself. There were arguments, fears, and countless theories. Some thought it was a test. Others said it was an invasion. But among the noise, a smaller group of thinkers, scientists, engineers, and historians noticed something strange in the Varn signal. It carried patterns too neat, too perfect, as if they had said the same words to many worlds before. They were not speaking to humans as individuals. They were speaking to another entry in their list. That realization spread quickly. The Varn did not see humanity as new or unique. They saw it as another species to fit into their perfect pattern. When this truth became clear, the silence across Earth grew heavier. The Varn ships hovered beyond the moon, waiting. Their leaders believed they had already won. They expected a message of surrender to arrive soon. No one had ever refused them before, but then, something unexpected happened. Across every communication channel, television, radio, satellites, and even the simplest local broadcasts, the same human voice spoke. It was calm, steady, and without anger. No one knew who had sent it. The message was short and clear. Try me and see what happens. The world froze. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that no speech could match. It was not a threat. It was not pride. It was the voice of someone who had learned through hardship that surrender was never the answer. The message spread faster than the first alien signal. People repeated it in homes, in streets, in classrooms. It became a quiet promise between strangers. The Varn did not understand it. Their translators found the phrase confusing. It was neither a challenge nor a refusal in the way their language worked. They called it an illogical expression. Yet something in those words unsettled them. For the first time, they delayed their movement toward the planet. Mira watched the sky from her observatory that night. She smiled faintly. "They do not understand," she said to her assistant. "They think silence means fear, but our silence is thinking. And now they will learn what that means." Aaron, far away in his mountain city, was teaching children at a local school. He told them not to be afraid. When you stand for what is right, you do not need loud voices. You only need steady hearts. He did not know that his words were being echoed by thousands of teachers around the world. The phrase, "Try me and see what happens," became more than words. It became a reminder of what made humans different. They argued, they doubted, they disagreed, but when tested, they stood together. The Varn continued to send messages offering peace and unity, claiming that joining them would end conflict and bring stability. They spoke of their grand network of worlds that followed one perfect rule: obey, and there will be no pain. But humanity had learned that peace without choice was only silence with a prettier name. In orbit, the alien ships shone brighter. They began scanning the planet, mapping continents, measuring cities, and calculating energy signatures. Their leaders watched from their grand command ship, confident that humans would soon accept what they called the offer of harmony. On Earth, scientists worked day and night, studying the Varn signals, their energy readings, and their communication structures. Nations shared data that had been secret for years. Old rivalries quieted as new cooperation began. For the first time in human history, every space agency and research center joined under one purpose: not to fight, but to understand. In a large control room beneath the desert, a group of engineers looked at the data and realized something incredible. The Varn technology was advanced, but it followed predictable patterns. Their systems were powerful but rigid. They had no creativity in their design. Their ships were perfect, but perfection has no room for surprise. That discovery spread quietly among leaders. Humanity might not match their technology, but it could think differently. It could adapt. Meanwhile, the Varn waited, growing impatient. Their sensors detected no movement of human fleets, no sign of weapons or armies. To them, this meant humanity had given up. They began preparing to move closer to Earth. Mira watched the silver lights shift slightly in the telescope's view. She felt her heart tighten. "They are moving," she whispered. Her assistant asked what humans would do. Mira looked up at the night sky. "We will do what we always do. We will learn faster than they expect." The world below remained calm. Cities glowed at night. People went to work. Children went to school. Life continued because humanity had faced impossible odds before: diseases, disasters, wars, and endless challenges, and had always found a way forward. This was just another test, one that came from the stars instead of the ground. The Varn broadcasted again. "We begin the integration. Prepare to receive." The world listened, and then the same voice returned to them, stronger this time, across every channel. "Try me and see what happens." The Varn paused. Their commanders held silent meetings. They studied human language again, trying to understand how a phrase so small could unsettle them so deeply. Their calculations said humanity should be afraid. Their logic said humanity should yield. But something in that voice carried a confidence they could not measure. On Earth, people felt no panic. Instead, there was unity. Artists painted the phrase on city walls. Pilots wrote it across their aircraft. Farmers carved it into the soil. Children sang it in schoolyards. Humanity had turned fear into something unbreakable. As the Varn ships moved closer, the silver light reflected across the oceans and deserts of Earth. It was beautiful, but cold. Humanity watched it rise in the sky like a second moon. Everyone knew that the next moment could change history forever. And yet, no one turned away. Mira stood at her observatory window, whispering to the stars, "You came to bring order, but you will find something you never met before." In the mountain city, Aaron looked at his students and said, "Remember this day, not because of what might happen, but because of what we chose to stand for." The world breathed together as one. The silence that once filled the night was no longer fear. It was focus, the kind of silence that comes before the moment when everything changes. The Varn thought humanity was alone. They were wrong. Humanity had each other, and that was more than enough. And as the stars shone brighter, the universe itself seemed to wait for the answer that was already given. "Try me and see what happens." The silver fleet of the Varn stood between Earth and the moon like a silent wall. Their ships were perfect, smooth and glowing with soft light that looked peaceful from far away. Yet that light was not peace. It was a warning that something powerful had arrived and believed itself unshakable. Every human eye looked upward. For some, the sight filled them with fear. For others, it filled them with curiosity. The question was the same in every heart. What will happen when their perfection meets our imperfection? In the main Varn ship, Commander Rin watched the blue planet through wide glass panels. He admired its beauty, the clouds moving slowly, the waters shining under the sun. He did not hate the humans. To him, they were only another world that needed order. In his record, no world had refused before. Every planet had eventually joined the network, where silence replaced chaos and control replaced confusion. It was not cruelty to him. It was logic. He believed he was giving a gift. Still, there was something strange about this world. The humans had not sent a message of surrender. Their words were few, but they carried weight. "Try me and see what happens." The phrase made no sense to him. It sounded like a puzzle that had no clear meaning. His advisors told him it was a human phrase of resistance. Rin dismissed it. He believed humans would change their tone once they saw the strength of the Varn. On Earth, life did not stop. People worked, talked, and moved as if nothing had changed. But behind the ordinary routines, something powerful was happening. Across cities and towns, people began to connect in new ways. They shared information and ideas faster than ever. Scientists opened old research, engineers shared blueprints, and artists filled public spaces with colors and words that spoke of courage. Humanity was not waiting for a savior. It was preparing to stand together. In a laboratory buried under the snow, Mira looked at the strange patterns in the Varn signals. She had learned that the aliens communicated through light waves, not sound. The more she studied, the more she realized how mechanical their messages were. There was no emotion, no variation. It was as if every word was programmed by machines that had never felt doubt. Mira understood that such perfection could be a weakness. Machines could not dream, but humans could. In the mountain city, Aaron continued teaching children. He taught them about space, science, and hope. He told them that being human meant not giving up, even when everything seemed impossible. The children asked if the Varn were stronger. Aaron smiled and said, "Maybe they are stronger, but we are alive. We think, we feel, and we learn. That makes us special." Governments held meetings day and night. Satellites circled Earth, tracking every move of the Varn fleet. The alien ships did not attack, but they released small probes that floated through the upper atmosphere. They scanned the air, the oceans, the power grids. Every nation received strange readings, as if someone were quietly looking into their systems. Some leaders wanted to respond with force, but others said patience was the best defense. Humanity had learned that rushing in fear often led to mistakes. Meanwhile, the Varn observed everything. They were puzzled by the lack of military movement. Their records showed that most species prepared fleets, weapons, and defenses. Humanity was doing none of that. Instead, humans were sharing songs, stories, and images filled with a simple message of unity. The Varn Council found it illogical. They did not understand how music or art could be a form of strength. Commander Rin asked his advisors, "Why do they not surrender or resist? Why do they just wait?" An advisor answered, "Perhaps they believe we will not harm them." Rin looked again at Earth and said, "No, they believe something else. They believe they are stronger in a way we cannot see." That thought stayed with him, though he did not admit it. Logic said humans could not win, but something about their silence and their calm behavior made him uneasy. On Earth, scientists and engineers began creating new systems that did not depend on satellites alone. They used old methods combined with new ones. Simple radio lines, ground-based communication, and even coded light signals. They wanted to be ready for anything, even if the Varn tried to block their technology. They called this project Echo, a network that connected every continent through both modern and ancient means. It was not fast, but it was unbreakable because it relied on the creativity of thousands of minds working together. Mira helped design part of the system. She worked long hours, surrounded by coffee cups and screens full of glowing data. When her assistant asked if she was afraid, she said, "Fear is normal. What matters is what we do after we feel it." Her words became a quiet truth that others repeated across labs and research centers. As days passed, the world changed in small but powerful ways. Borders mattered less. Rival nations shared data and resources. Human pride turned into shared purpose. It was not forced unity. It was chosen. That choice made it real. The Varn noticed these changes but misunderstood them. They thought humanity was preparing to defend, not to connect. To them, unity was only useful if it created obedience. They did not see that humans were uniting for understanding. Commander Rin grew impatient. He ordered a test. A small Varn craft flew closer to Earth and released a field of light meant to measure human energy systems. It was harmless, or so they believed. Yet on Earth, the sudden pulse caused power grids to flicker for a moment. Cities went dark, then bright again as backup systems took over. People stepped outside staring at the sky. No one screamed. No one panicked. They simply waited for what came next. Rin watched from his command deck. The pulse should have silenced the planet for several hours. Instead, the lights returned almost instantly. Human systems had rerouted in seconds. That was not in any of their records. No other species had ever adapted so fast. Rin frowned and whispered, "They changed the pattern." The humans had not known what would happen, but when it did, they solved it as they always did, by working together. Engineers across the world communicated through Echo. They shared instructions and built quick fixes. What should have taken days took minutes. It was not the work of one hero, but of millions thinking together. Mira saw the readings return to normal and smiled. "They tested us," she said softly. "Now they know we are not simple." Aaron looked up at the stars that night and spoke to his students. "The real test is not about strength," he said. "It is about will. They will learn that soon." The next day the phrase appeared again across every channel. The same calm human voice said, "Try me and see what happens." This time it sounded less like defiance and more like truth. It had become part of who humanity was. Rin listened to the broadcast. The voice echoed through the quiet halls of his ship. It was steady and clear, not proud, not afraid. Something inside him felt the first spark of curiosity. He had spent his life studying systems and order, but never before had he met a system that refused to follow the same rules. He wondered if there was more to these humans than the data showed. On Earth, people started sending signals of their own. Not attacks, but messages. Music, poetry, math, and art, all directed toward the Varn fleet. They wanted the aliens to see what humanity truly was. Scientists sent samples of languages, stories, and history through coded lights. Each message said the same thing in its own way. We think. We feel. We create. The Varn did not know how to respond. Their machines could read data but not meaning. Their logic had no space for emotion. They called the human messages strange and inefficient, but still they kept receiving them. Every new message made their records more confused. Their translators failed to categorize half of what they received. One Varn officer said, "Commander, we cannot classify their actions." Rin replied, "Perhaps they are not meant to be classified." The words surprised even him. He had never questioned the order of things. Yet something about humanity made him wonder if order alone was enough. Their creativity was unpredictable, and unpredictability was something even the most advanced system could not fully control. As the days passed, the Varn continued to observe while humanity continued to build. The Project Echo grew larger. Human scientists used their knowledge to connect not just nations, but people who had never spoken before. It was messy and full of mistakes, but it worked. Out of imperfection, something beautiful was forming. At the end of the second week, the Varn Council demanded a report. Rin stood before them through a shimmering light screen. "They have not surrendered," he said. "They continue to communicate among themselves. They send us symbols, words, and sounds with no clear meaning, but I believe they are not preparing for war. They are preparing for understanding." The council was displeased. They told him to continue the integration process. They believed logic would soon win. Rin obeyed, but part of him felt doubt. For the first time in his life, he was unsure of what logic truly meant. On Earth, people felt that something was changing in the stars. They did not know what the Varn were thinking, but they could feel that the next step was near. Humanity had passed the first test, not with weapons, but with will. As night fell again across the blue planet, Mira stood under the stars and said, "They thought silence meant fear. Now they see it meant strength." And somewhere beyond the moon, in the heart of a perfect ship, Commander Rin whispered to himself, "Try me, and see what happens." The test had only just begun. The world was holding its breath. Days had passed since the Varn had sent their pulse of light toward Earth, a quiet test that was meant to measure the planet's systems. To the Varn it was only a small experiment, but to humans it had become a moment of truth. When the lights came back on in seconds, something inside the Varn fleet shifted. They had met something new, something that refused to fit inside their perfect pattern. Commander Rin stood in the center of his command room, surrounded by glowing panels of light. His eyes were fixed on the blue and green world turning slowly beneath him. The readings made no sense. Every other world they had tested before had gone silent for hours. Earth had adapted in less than a minute. He had never seen anything like it. He turned to his advisors.
"How did they recover so fast?"
he asked. The lead technician lowered his head. "Their systems are built in ways we do not understand. They are not perfect, but they seem to repair themselves through many different paths. It is like thousands of small minds working together." Rin walked toward the large window and looked at the distant oceans shining in the sunlight. "A system that lives," he said quietly. "They are not a single structure. They are many minds linked through something invisible." On Earth, Mira was studying the same data from her observatory. She could see that the Varn energy wave had moved through the atmosphere like a ripple through water. For a few seconds it had bent the magnetic field, but then the planet had adjusted. Nature itself had answered. She smiled as she wrote her notes. "They forgot that we belong to a living world. We do not just use it. We are part of it." Around the world, the phrase "try me and see what happens" spread again. It was written on signs carved into stone and whispered between strangers. It became more than words. It became a heartbeat that people could feel together. The Varn Council sent new orders to Commander Rin. They told him to begin the next stage of integration. The goal was not to harm but to demonstrate control. They believed that if humanity saw a clear display of their technology, fear would replace hope. Rin read the order in silence. His logic told him it would work, but his instinct said it would not. He had studied humans long enough to see that their strength did not come from machines. It came from spirit. Still he obeyed. The fleet began to prepare a second pulse, stronger and wider, designed to test every network on Earth. It was not meant to destroy anything, only to disable. The Varn had always believed that control was a gift. In a mountain city, Aaron stood outside with his students. They were looking at the sky where small bright dots were visible even in daylight. He explained that those dots were the alien ships that had come to bring order. A little boy asked him, "Will they take away our freedom?" Aaron looked at him with a calm smile. "Only if we forget who we are," he said. "Freedom is not something anyone can take. It lives inside you." In the large communication center of Project Echo, people were working in long rows of computers and screens. They had learned from the first pulse and had built a new kind of system, one that could bend instead of break. It used human creativity as its strength. No single person controlled it. Everyone added a small piece, and together those pieces made something that could think in many directions. Mira was part of the Echo network now. She worked beside scientists from places she had only read about before. Her screen showed hundreds of lines of code changing in real time, as people around the world sent updates. She said softly, "This is how humans fight. We build together." Far above, the Varn ships glowed brighter. The second pulse was ready. Commander Rin gave the order. A soft wave of silver light spread from the center of the fleet, flowing toward the blue planet like mist through space. On Earth, satellites flickered. For a few seconds, power grids trembled. Then something unexpected happened. The light that was supposed to silence systems instead reflected back in small bursts. It was as if the Earth was shining back at the fleet. The Echo network had caught the energy and redirected it through thousands of reflective channels, satellites and mirrors that humans had repurposed. Mira saw the readings on her screen and gasped. "It worked," she said. "We turned their wave into our message." The data that returned carried not numbers or code, but a simple phrase repeated again and again in light patterns. "Try me and see what happens." The Varn ships received the signal. It was not a weapon, but it entered their communication system and repeated on every channel. Rin stared at the screens as the phrase flashed across his entire command deck. He had never seen anything so bold. His officers looked nervous. One of them asked, "Commander, what do we do?" "The message is everywhere." Rin answered, "We listen." For the first time in the history of the Varn fleet, the message of another world was played across every ship. The words were simple, yet every Varn could feel something strange inside when they heard them. It was not fear. It was curiosity mixed with respect. Back on Earth, people celebrated quietly. They did not cheer with loud voices. They smiled, hugged, and looked up at the stars. The victory was not about power, but about understanding that they could respond, that they were not helpless. Humanity had found its voice and the universe had heard it. Aaron watched the night sky with his students. They spoke first, he said, but now they are listening. A girl asked him, "Will they be angry?" Aaron shook his head. "They will be confused. And confusion is the beginning of learning." In his command room, Rin studied the human systems again. Every model he ran failed to explain their actions. He could not predict their next move. That realization shook him. The Varn Empire had always trusted that logic could explain everything. Now he was facing something that lived beyond logic. He recorded a private note in his log. "These humans are different. They are not built on order but on motion. They fall and rise again. They do not seek perfection. They seek meaning." He paused before ending the record. Perhaps perfection is not strength after all. The Varn Council sent another command. They demanded that Rin proceed with full integration. He hesitated. For the first time in his career, he delayed an order. He told his crew to hold position. When asked why, he said, "We need to understand them before we decide what to do." While the Varn debated among themselves, humanity continued to create. Artists painted murals on city walls showing Earth surrounded by bright light. Scientists shared free energy plans through Echo. Farmers, teachers, and engineers worked together as if invisible borders no longer mattered. The planet was changing in ways even humans did not fully see. The threat from the sky had made them look at each other instead of apart. Mira stood outside her observatory one evening and looked at the stars. She felt a deep calm. "They came to teach us order," she said to her assistant, "but they helped us find unity instead." Far above, Rin stood before the great window of his ship. The blue planet glowed softly, its clouds moving like silver threads. He whispered, "They should have been afraid." "Why are they not afraid?" An officer answered. "Because they do not see us as gods. They see us as mirrors." Rin turned his gaze toward the officer. "Mirrors?" "Yes," said the officer. "They reflect what they are. We show them control and they show us freedom." Rin said nothing more. He knew that what the officer said was true. The humans had reflected something back that the Varn had forgotten long ago. The spark of wonder. The next day, small signals came from Earth. They were not words this time, but images. Pictures of people working, children learning, families helping each other. The Varn machines translated them as expressions of cooperation. Rin saw them and felt something like warmth, though he could not explain it. He decided to send a single message back to Earth. It was short and neutral. "We have seen your response. We are observing." He did not say surrender or integration. It was the first time in his career he had sent a message without command. When the message reached Earth, the world paused. It was the first time the Varn had spoken without authority. The human voice replied in calm tone, "Then keep watching. You might learn something new." Rin heard the response and felt a quiet smile form on his face. "They teach without meaning to," he said. In the following days, the Varn ships stopped sending energy pulses. They remained in position, silent but alert. Inside their grand fleet, discussions began. Some wanted to continue with the plan, others wanted to wait. A few even said the word that had never been spoken in their history: respect. The Varn fleet remained above Earth, a shimmering wall of silver in the sky. Commander Rin walked through the command hall, his mind heavy with thought. Every observation they had made so far defied the rules he had relied on for centuries. Humans had responded to the first pulses of energy not with panic, but with unity. They had turned technology into a shield, creativity into strategy, and hope into action. Rin paused in front of the great observation window, staring at the blue planet below. The world seemed calm from this height, the clouds drifting lazily over oceans, forests, and deserts. Yet he knew the calm was misleading. Earth was not silent because it was weak. It was silent because it was preparing. The humans had always prepared. That was what made them unpredictable. That was what made them strong. Inside the Varn Council chamber, debates continued. Some members insisted that the humans would eventually surrender. "They are clever," said one officer, "but cleverness has limits. All systems break," another spoke quietly. "They are not just clever. They adapt. They do not follow the rules of logic. They do not obey the pattern of perfection." "This is something new." Rin leaned forward. "They are not here to follow our rules. They are here to live on their own terms. That is what makes them dangerous to our assumptions, not to our people. Dangerous to our certainty. On Earth, life had begun to hum with quiet energy. Cities were alive with activity but not panic. Children played, teachers taught, and families moved as they always had. Yet beneath the ordinary rhythm, extraordinary work was happening. People were building systems that could bend like the wind, devices that could reroute energy, and communication networks that no alien logic could fully predict. Mira worked late into the night at the Echo Laboratory. Rows of screens showed signals from all over the planet. Humans were connecting not just through satellites but through ground-based systems, solar-powered repeaters, and even coded light beams sent from mountaintops and across rivers. She leaned back, exhausted but satisfied. "They cannot predict us because we are not predictable," she said to her assistant. The assistant looked puzzled. "But Commander Rin is observing us. Can he not see what we are doing?" Mira smiled. "He can see it, but he cannot feel it. He cannot understand what it means to be human. That is the difference." In the mountains, Aaron taught his students about the stars, the planets, and the meaning of courage. "Courage is not about fighting," he said. "It is about thinking, creating, and standing together when the world expects you to give up. That is what humans do. That is why we are strong." The Varn had now decided to send scouts closer to Earth. Their mission was not to attack, but to observe human responses more closely. The scouts hovered above cities and fields, collecting data at incredible speed. They watched how humans repaired power lines in minutes, rerouted energy through improvised circuits, and sent messages that were both technical and artistic. Every system the Varn sent to measure humans came back incomplete, because humans had found ways to exceed the calculations. Commander Rin observed the results. He had spent centuries mastering prediction, but prediction had failed. Humans were not following patterns. They were creating new ones in real time. His mind struggled to accept it. "They adapt faster than we can calculate," Rin said quietly. "Every move we make is met with something unexpected." An officer replied, "They are not just adapting. They are learning from us." "Yes," Rin said, "but not in our way. They learn in a way that is alive." Back on Earth, the human message of "try me and see what happens" had become more than words. It had become a philosophy, a quiet force that guided every decision. Artists painted murals showing humans connected by light, music, and energy. Engineers built devices that communicated with one another in ways the Varn could not anticipate. Children created games that mirrored strategy and cooperation, unknowingly practicing the principles of adaptation that would soon astonish the Varn. Mira noticed something remarkable. Each human action seemed small on its own, but together these small actions formed an invisible network that reached across the globe. One simple adjustment in a satellite, one line of code sent to a distant laboratory, one teacher sharing knowledge with students in a remote village, all of it contributed to a larger system that even the Varn could not map. Aaron watched from his mountain village as humans across the world shared information freely. Old rivalries were set aside. Borders mattered less. People were connected by ideas and by determination. "They see the value of each person," he said to his students. "That is why we are strong." Commander Rin began to feel something new. He had never doubted the power of the Varn fleet before. He had never hesitated in command. Yet now, facing a species that did not follow the expected rules, he found himself asking questions he had never asked before. "What is strength?" he whispered to himself. "Is it control or creativity? Is it fear or unity?" One officer answered without thinking. "It is control." "Strength is control," Rin shook his head. "No, these humans are strong because they are alive. They are not perfect, but they are more than we are." The scouts sent new readings. Energy systems on Earth were not just rerouting, they were interacting. Machines and people, cities and villages, satellites and forests, all seemed to communicate in a vast invisible rhythm. Commander Rin realized that humans had turned the test of the Varn into their own design. They had used observation and curiosity to create something beyond calculation. On Earth, Mira and her team noticed the same pattern. Signals from different continents synchronized in a way that no algorithm could predict. The pulse of the planet itself seemed to join the humans in their response. They were not fighting the Varn with weapons. They were responding with thought, creativity, and unity. Aaron gathered his students under the stars. "Do you see them?" he asked. "The ships above? They are learning from us even if they do not know it. The children nodded. Are they our friends? One asked. Not yet, Aaron said. But they are starting to understand something important. They are learning that strength is not only about power, it is about living, thinking, and choosing together. Commander Rin finally spoke to his council. We cannot force them. We cannot predict them. Every attempt we make meets something we cannot understand. Perhaps it is time to consider a new approach. The council murmured. What do you mean? Rin turned to them. We must watch and learn. These humans are not just another world. They are something entirely new. Our methods of control will not work. Logic will fail where they succeed. The Varn fleet remained in place, but the mood shifted. They no longer saw humanity as simply a species to integrate. They began to recognize the humans as something more, something that could not be forced into the perfect patterns the Varn had always used. On Earth, the movement continued. Artists, engineers, teachers, and children worked together in ways that seemed ordinary, but were extraordinary. One engineer in Africa sent a small energy relay to a school in Asia. A teacher in South America shared a coding problem with students in Europe. Each action was simple, yet it added to a growing network of thought and creativity that was invisible to the Varn but powerful in reality. Mira watched the global data flow and said, They cannot control us because we control ourselves. Our strength comes from the mind and the heart, not from machines. Aaron smiled at his students. Remember this. You do not need to be the strongest in the sky to make a difference. You only need to be alive, aware, and willing to act. Commander Rin walked through the observation deck and realized that the humans had done what no species before had achieved. They had met the Varn not with fear, not with surrender, and not with aggression. They had met them with will, creativity, and unity. They had adapted faster than the invaders could calculate, and had turned observation into understanding. The Varn fleet had come to impose order, but they were beginning to see that humanity's order was different. It was alive. It was flexible. It was impossible to control. One officer asked quietly, Commander, are we losing? Rin looked down at the planet and said, No, we are learning. That is what it feels like to face a species that refuses to fit the rules. On Earth, life went on. The humans did not celebrate their small victories loudly, because they knew the challenge was far from over. Yet hope flowed through the cities, villages, and towns. People knew that together they could face uncertainty and respond in ways that could never be predicted. Mira leaned back in her chair and whispered, They came to teach us, but we are teaching them instead. Aaron spoke to his students as the stars reflected in their eyes. We are showing them what it means to be human. That is our true power. Commander Rin understood it too. He had studied countless civilizations, mastered every logic system, and controlled every species he had met. Yet none of them had taught him what these humans were teaching now. Strength was not perfection. Strength was life. Strength was unity. Strength was courage that did not demand dominance. The Varn fleet hovered quietly above Earth. Commander Rin had spent weeks observing the humans, and each day revealed something new. The humans did not respond with anger, fear, or submission. They responded with thought, creativity, and cooperation. The more Rin watched, the more he realized that Earth was not a world to conquer. It was a world to learn from. In the heart of the Echo Project, Mira sat surrounded by hundreds of screens. Every continent contributed to the global network. Satellites, ground stations, solar-powered repeaters, and simple coded light systems all worked together in ways that were impossible to predict. Human ingenuity had turned the planet itself into a living network of observation, adaptation, and communication. This is extraordinary, Mira whispered to her assistant. They have watched our first response, then adapted again. We are creating something larger than any single mind. Her assistant smiled. It is as if the planet itself is helping. Mira nodded. It is helping, and we are helping it. That is what humans do. We connect, we learn, we act together. Across the world, Aaron continued teaching children under the open sky. He pointed toward the stars where the Varn ships floated in silence. Look at them, he said. They came to teach us control. They did not expect to learn from us. Every action we take shows them a truth they have forgotten. Strength is not control. Strength is life, connection, and courage. One child raised her hand. Will they understand us? Aaron smiled. Yes, they are starting to. But understanding takes time. They have never met a world like ours before. Commander Rin observed the humans as he had never observed any other species. Their actions were unpredictable, yet coordinated. They were creative, adaptive, and united without needing orders from the top. The humans had no central authority controlling their actions, yet every small decision contributed to a larger harmony. It was a system that the Varn had never seen and could not calculate. He called his senior officers together. They are teaching us, he said. Not with words, not with weapons, but with life itself. Every response they make shows unity, courage, and intelligence. We cannot control them. We can only watch and learn. The officers were silent. Some had served the Varn for centuries, and none had ever faced a world that resisted by being itself. Rin continued. We were sent to guide them. We believed we could shape their future. But they have shown us that guidance is not always needed. Strength lies in being alive, aware, and working together. On Earth, the phrase "try me and see what happens" had become a quiet anthem. People whispered it to themselves as a reminder of courage. They painted it on walls, carved it into wood, and wrote it across books. It was not a threat. It was a truth. It reminded humanity that even in the presence of beings far stronger and more advanced, they could act, adapt, and remain free. Mira sent another signal through Echo. It was not a message of warning, not a threat, not a call to fight. It was a message of sharing. We are alive, we think, and we choose, she said silently as the system transmitted. Every human on Earth contributed to this message in some small way. Each action, each thought, each choice became part of the living message sent to the stars. High above, Commander Rin watched the transmissions. Every pattern, every ripple, every variation carried meaning he had never seen before. The humans were not perfect. Their solutions were messy, full of trial and error, yet each mistake led to innovation. They were learning faster than his systems could calculate, and every response strengthened their resilience. Rin realized something profound. The Varn had always believed that civilization needed order to survive. Control, precision, and obedience were the foundation of their power. Yet the humans were thriving without strict control. They were thriving because they adapted, connected, and acted with intention. Strength was not perfection. Strength was life. He recorded a personal message in his log. Humans do not obey. Humans do not surrender. Humans do not follow a single pattern. They live, and in living, they teach more than we could imagine. They are not a species to guide. They are a species to understand. On Earth, Aaron brought his students together to watch the sky as the Varn fleet hovered silently above. See them? He asked. They are learning from us. They are watching how we act when we face uncertainty. That is the lesson we give them. Courage is quiet. Strength is patient. Life is resilient. The children nodded, staring at the ships as if the stars themselves were listening. They did not feel fear. They felt connection. They knew that being human meant facing the unknown with unity and courage. In cities, villages, and towns across Earth, people acted in small ways that mattered. Engineers repaired infrastructure using shared designs. Teachers exchanged ideas and curricula without borders. Farmers coordinated irrigation with distant communities. Each choice, small as it was, became part of a network that reflected humanity's spirit back to the Varn. Commander Rin realized the magnitude of what he was witnessing. This world, which they had thought would be a simple conquest, had become a teacher. They had arrived thinking they could impose order, yet every human action defied expectation. The humans were not only surviving, they were showing what life could be when connected, creative, and courageous. A young Varn officer approached Rin. Commander, they are not reacting in fear. They are teaching us to think differently. Rin nodded slowly. Yes, that is the lesson. They are not a problem to control. They are an experience to understand. And in understanding them, we are learning a truth we never knew. Mira watched the data streams from Echo. They had reached a level of connection she had never imagined possible. It was no longer just technology. It was life itself, interacting, adapting, and responding to every signal from space. She realized that humans had done more than survive the test. They had transformed it into something greater. Every action counts, she said to her team. Every thought, every effort, every choice adds to the whole. That is why they cannot be predicted. That is why they cannot be controlled. Rin studied the humans further. He saw artists creating murals that symbolized unity, scientists developing new systems together, children learning and playing in ways that mirrored problem-solving and cooperation. He began to understand that humanity's strength was not in any weapon or technology. It was in their creativity, their connection, and their will to act together. The Varn Council called for a meeting. "Commander," they said, "your reports show extraordinary adaptation. What is your recommendation?" Rin replied calmly. "We cannot control them. We cannot predict them. They are beyond the reach of our usual methods. I recommend observation. We must learn from them rather than impose upon them." The council was silent. This was a decision no one had ever made. To let a species be free was not customary for the Varn. Yet Rin's words carried truth. The humans were not to be controlled. They were to be understood. On Earth, the phrase "try me and see what happens" echoed one final time through every medium. It was no longer a challenge. It was a statement of identity. It reminded humanity that they had survived not because of strength of arms, but because of unity, creativity, and courage. Mira sent one last signal through Echo. It carried images of Earth, people working together, and the simple words written across cities. We choose life, we choose connection, we choose understanding. The Varn received it, and every ship felt the message. It was not a threat, not a declaration of war. It was an invitation to see life differently. Commander Rin watched the data flow and said softly, "They show us what it means to be alive. They are not just humans. They are teachers." Aaron gathered his students one last time. He pointed to the stars and said, "We have shown them who we are. Not through power, not through fear, not through control. We have shown them through life itself. That is what humanity does. That is our strength." The children smiled, feeling a pride that was quiet but powerful. They understood, in a simple way, what adults sometimes forgot. Humanity's power did not come from dominance. It came from choice, courage, and unity. The Varn began to depart slowly. They had not been defeated, but they had learned. They had learned that Earth was not a world to bend. It was a world to respect. The universe had assumed humanity could be controlled, yet now it had learned a truth that would echo across the stars. Commander Rin recorded his final log. "Earth is unlike any other world we have met. Humans do not submit. Humans do not obey blindly. Humans act, adapt, and live together in ways that defy our logic. The universe has underestimated them. We have underestimated them. The lesson is clear. Strength is not perfection. Strength is life." On Earth, life returned to its natural rhythm, yet nothing would ever be the same. Humanity had faced a challenge from beyond the stars and had emerged not by power or fear, but by living as they always had, together, creative, and free. Mira looked up at the stars one final time and whispered, "We did it. We showed them who we are." Aaron smiled at his students. "Remember this moment, not because of what might have happened, but because of what we chose to be. That is our legacy."